Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, protesting clowns, and European walkouts all in the space of an hour at Durban 2. Football's New York Jets face another problem with the Jewish community. And on Yom HaShoah, Jews gather in different ways to remember the Holocaust. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. Well, it's finally here. The UN World Conference on Racism, or Durban 2 as Jewish organizations have taken to calling it, took place this week in Switzerland, and what was predicted to be an event heavy in anti-Israel overtones didn't disappoint. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was the only head of state to attend the event, and in his speech delivered in his native Persian, he denounced Israel as, quote, a totally racist government in the occupied Palestine, and invoked the Holocaust in declaring the founders of Israel, quote, resorted to military aggression to make an entire nation homeless on the pretext of Jewish sufferings, and in fact, in compensation for the dire consequences of racism in Europe, they helped bring to power the most cruel and repressive racist regime in Palestine. Ahmadinejad's use of the phrase, the pretext of Jewish sufferings, is particularly noteworthy because The Guardian reported that Ahmadinejad omitted a phrase questioning the authenticity of the Holocaust that was actually in the text of the speech and referred to, quote, the ambiguous and dubious question of the Holocaust. Ahmadinejad's comments generated an immediate response from European delegates at the conference, with a reported 40 or more walking out in unison in protest of Ahmadinejad's statements about Israel. These reportedly included representatives from at least Britain, France, Spain, Finland, Denmark, and the Czech Republic. Already absent from the conference were a handful of nations who boycotted the event over its predicted treatment of Israel, including the United States, Canada, the Netherlands, Germany, Italy, Australia, and of course, Israel. Also disrupting the speech were a number of protesters wearing clown costumes, and the JTA reported that the credentials of many Jewish activists were pulled as a result, including 21 from the French Union of Jewish Students. Ahmadinejad's speech raised the immediate ire of many international leaders, including UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who remained seated during the speech, but later criticized the, quote, use of this platform by the Iranian president to accuse, divide, and even incite. Many of the conference's supporters, including Ban Ki-moon and European nations still at the conference, expressed their point of view that Ahmadinejad's speech does not represent the whole conference, and that the final statement from the conference won't be as critical of Israel. And the speech was not without a response from Israelis. President Shimon Peres slated Ahmadinejad with a series of notorious Jew haters in asserting, quote, it is hard to fathom why despots such as Hitler the Nazi, Stalin the Bolshevik, and Ahmadinejad the Persian chose the Jews as the main target for their hatred, their madness, and their violence. Recently installed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also made a statement, noting the events coinciding with Holocaust Memorial Day, stating, in Switzerland, the guest of honor is a racist and a Holocaust denier who doesn't conceal his intention to wipe Israel off the face of this earth, adding, we will not allow the Holocaust deniers to carry out another Holocaust against the Jewish people. And on the subject of Holocaust Memorial Day, or Yom HaShoah, TJC sent reporters to 3 very different types of memorial events this week so that we could share with our viewers the many ways in which people are trying to remember. First, Margie Rauhout reports on one marathon effort that brings an entire community together to try to understand the size of the loss the Holocaust created.
19 congregations gathered as one on the Upper West Side of Manhattan on Holocaust Memorial Day to read the names of those who died in the Holocaust throughout the night and day. The 20-hour reading began at the conservative congregation Shaarei Tzedek, with rabbis of all these Upper West Side congregations taking their turns in the marathon reading's first half hour.
What's really interesting is how far we don't get. You would think you read names all night and you're going to get far. What we do is pick up year by year by year.
In fact, one event organizer said they get through about 40,000 names each year, which means that even after 11 years of staging this event, they're still far from recognizing all 6 million Jews who died.
When you're actually reading the names, you really get a sense of how many people were killed. It's just name after name after name, and you get this sense of people who could have survived and should have survived.
And that power is increased by the fact that these 19 congregations, ranging from Orthodox to Conservative to Reform to post-denominational, are all able to come together as one.
Clearly the anti-Semites really were looking for ways to define us as one community. Least we can do is to define ourselves as one community to sustain their memory.
After the all-night vigil, the reading continued the next morning at the JCC of Manhattan until the evening. In the daytime, children were able to take part, and family members of those who died in the Holocaust were invited to share the names of their deceased relatives.
This way they have not really died. They still are in our mind. We think of them laughingly.
And the event, interestingly, isn't only organized by Jews. Some of the JCC's event organizers were young, non-Jewish Germans, part of a fellowship program to send out young Germans to do reconciliation work all over the world.
I'm a first-generation German, so my family is an immigrant family to Germany and also survived the Holocaust for being political opponents to the Third Reich. So that kind of gave me an idea that I would like to work in a Jewish organization outside of Germany.
Thank you, Margie. In hoping to gain memories from those still alive, Rebecca Honig-Friedman reports that there was a political message as well.
While Yom HaShoah is typically thought of as a day to remember the Holocaust, the survivors and children of survivors who gathered at the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York presented a message of what the lessons of the Holocaust mean for the broader world.
It's important that these young people and you folks remember. Because as I talked about the British and the slave trade and the American Indian and the Turks talking about the genocide against the Armenians.
Celia Kenner, a survivor who went into hiding and was taken in by a non-Jewish Polish family, related how her story of being saved by non-Jews emphasizes the importance of crossing beyond religious and ethnic boundaries.
How can I not tell this to children of today, to learn, to be helpful, and tolerate kids of all faiths and all colors?
A museum representative noted that this message of universal tolerance and guarding against oppression of all peoples is common among the survivors who work with the museum.
And they say things like, when I watch the news about Darfur, I think about my own family, and a baby's cry is a baby's cry.
And sometimes that outspoken message can touch on the Jewish political conflicts of today.
I know I'm going to get into political trouble if I say this, but I feel that many of my fellow religionists in Israel have forgotten, and maybe they should look at some of these pictures and remember, and then look at some of the pictures of the Palestinian kids.
But whatever one's political persuasion, all in attendance agreed that it's important to raise awareness at a time when survivors' first-hand testimony might not be available for much longer.
It's the non-Jewish kids that can sometimes, after relating my story, say, "Can I have a picture? Can I touch you?" And I said, "But of course." And I said, "But why? Don't I look like any one of your relatives or grandparents?" So that I can go home and tell my uncle, my stepfather, my mother's boyfriend, whoever, that they were wrong. They're telling me there never was a Holocaust. You couldn't make up this story. That's what my goal is, to make children understand, believe, so that such an atrocity never happen again.
Thank you, Rebecca. In our last Yom HaShoah experience, those who survived by hiding with non-Jews gathered for a special candlelighting ceremony. Christian Needon was there.
Those who survived the Holocaust by hiding with non-Jews, or hidden children, were the subjects of a Holocaust Memorial Day event at the headquarters of the Anti-Defamation League. At the candlelighting ceremony, several men and women who spent their wartime childhoods in hiding shared their stories.
Well, I was a hidden child. I was born in Germany. My parents died in Auschwitz. I was hidden in France for 2 years and smuggled out.
Such stories inspired journalist Erin Einhorn to investigate her late mother's own story of survival as a hidden child in her memoir, The Pages in Between. Einhorn was an invited speaker at the ceremony and used it as an opportunity to reinforce the importance of Holocaust remembrance.
Actually, in my speech today, I was talking about how in Jewish custom, we die 2 deaths. So first we die our actual deaths, which is, when our hearts stop beating. And then we die a secondary death, which is the death of being forgotten.
Thank you, Christian. Now to end our broadcast on a lighter note, the New York Jets had their second recent run-in with the Jewish community this week, when it was revealed that the National Football League had scheduled their home opener on Rosh Hashanah, with their next game having a kickoff time just hours before Yom Kippur. The Jets and Giants were already in hot water with the Jewish community in recent months when they made an initial agreement, since revoked, to have their new stadium sponsored by insurance company Allianz, which is making reparations payments for its actions during the Holocaust. The NFL is accommodating Jewish Jets fans for the second of the 2 games, so that it will likely end at least a few hours before Kol Nidre kicks off. That's all for this week. For more news and analysis from the Jewish Channel, please visit newsdesk.tjctv.com. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable, IO Optimum Cable Channel 291, Time Warner Cable Channel 528, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and Cox Cable Channel 1. For more information, please visit tjctv.com.